is Joseph Baruga, the CEO of Canideal, Brad Sikar, the CEO of Sales, and Michael Klein, the CEO of Cannabis and So come on down, get ready to learn, pull your eyes up from your own technology, open your ears to the next wave of technology.
Okay.
I'll get up here.
So what did we set?
Since there's three of y'all, why don't we change it up and put the three of you over here?
Okay.
You go by Joseph or Joe?
Joseph.
Joseph. Hello, Scott. Scott Pratt. Nice to meet you.
All right.
Joseph, Michael Klein.
Joseph Hurd. All right.
Okay, good morning. I'm Scott Patterson. I am based in Toronto. I've spent my 35-year career primarily in the capital markets, almost exclusively in the technology sector. Many moons ago, I was chairman and CEO of a company in Canada called Yorkton Securities. Some of you may have heard of it. It was the #1 investment bank focused on technology in Canada. And until the cannabis wave took place, I was sticking with my roots around how technology overlapped with media and financial services. But a few years ago, as we all know, a very interesting thing evolved. It was just fascinating to listen to the lawyers and advisors about the regulatory regime. I have the following view. I've never seen a regulatory arbitrage that exists today in connection with the cannabis industry that affects valuations and investment opportunity in my entire career. I've never seen anything like this. And I'm a fairly close friend with Bruce Linton. Some of you may know the name. He is the poster boy for the industry. He's the CEO of Canopy. I think he's the CEO of the decade in Canada. I had half an hour with him yesterday. I'm just so proud of what he's accomplished. But one of the things that I believe is that our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who ran to become Prime Minister, one of his essential themes was to legalize marijuana and not decriminalize it. That was very important from his perspective. He was convinced that decriminalization would not eradicate the black market, but that it had to be legalized and that you could actually invite participants from the black market community into the real community. I think that his legacy will not actually be in connection with being the libertarian that he is from that perspective, but more so that he has created this regulatory arbitrage where capital formation in connection with Canadian-based companies are creating global behemoths right in front of your eyes. You know, when Canopy was $30, all the papers in Canada said, you know, this is insane. It's a $7 billion market cap. And, you know, my view was you're looking at Philip Morris or British American Tobacco right in front of you. And if you thought about the beer industry or the spirits industry or the tobacco industry, would you think that the leader in that industry was going to have a $7 billion market cap? It's the same thing today. The stock's $67 today. Pre the $5 billion that Constellation is investing, market cap's about 15 billion Canadian. So it's about 11.5, 12 billion US. I'm not saying the stock won't go to 40 before it goes to 100, but Bruce and his team are extremely smart guys, but they have this huge advantage. Notwithstanding all the people in this room, it is extremely difficult to get mainstream financial investors in the United States to participate in anything other than Canadian-based licensed producers. You may know these stats, but today, Canadian-listed Canadian licensed producers are trading around 20 times this year's revenue. The Canadian-listed U.S. state licensed producers are trading around 4 to 5 times this year's revenue. And yet the market opportunity in the United States is obviously substantially bigger. California, most people think, is about 30% bigger than all of Canada. And that's the regulatory arbitrage. I was involved in one of the companies I've backed. It's called Halo, which will be listed in Canada in a couple of weeks. It's Nevada, Oregon, California cannabis oils producer. And we raised $22 million. Canaccord, Claris, and Gravitas, which are 3 Canadian-based dealers, did the financing. I called up a great buddy of mine, a broker at Raymond James, one of their top brokers, and he said, I can't even buy it personally. I'm not even permitted. I can't even put in an unsolicited order. And then I called somebody in the United States, and the guy said, my lawyer won't let me buy it. I went, oh my God, my thesis is absolutely right. Wait until those barriers come down. And then as those of you who've been watching Tilray, which was a private company until recently, Vancouver-based, Canadian licensed producer, decided to list directly on NASDAQ, and it's been an unbelievable success story. Went public at $17, the stock was up another $10 yesterday to $100, and this morning, when I looked briefly, it looked like it was going to go up another $10 higher, somewhere around about $11 billion U.S. market cap this morning. That is a function of this unbelievable pent-up demand of U.S. institutional interests that want to play the space, don't want to play an ETF, and want to play it in a very safe way. So it's a fascinating situation. This timeline with respect to legalization matters a lot with respect to the delta between those valuations. But the reality is these Canadian companies have a massive head start on Canadian companies in today's market. What's interesting about technology, and where a lot of investors seem to be moving, there's a thesis that the plant is going to become, the flower is going to become a commodity, and there's more and more interest from investors on Bay Street, which is Wall Street's equivalent in Canada, on derivative opportunities, meaning what isn't the plant? Is it oils? Is it in the seed to sale aspect of technology? Is it in the digital publishing side of the world? A lot of technologies are racing in to the sector. Bruce Linton said, and he really believes he's got to get this message out, that Canopy is a technology company. If you don't know his background, he came from technology. He was one of Terry Matthews, I'm not sure if you ever heard the name, a kind of a legendary billionaire out of Canada who built a company called Mitel, which is actually being sold right now. Bruce comes from technology, and he believes he's built the platform with respect to all of their activities, the way things are grown, the way they're tracked from seed to sale, the way they plan on interacting with the various provincial bodies that are responsible for legislation, that it's all technology-based. The other thing about Canopy Health is much more talked about, he told me, in New York than in Toronto, is they have filed 30-odd clinical trials in connection with cannabis and how it obviously may have a high degree of efficacy with respect to certain medical ailments. Other than using a synthetic in the United States, you can't do a clinical trial with cannabis, and in Canada you can. So one more example of where Big Pharma is sitting on the sidelines, and it's quite possible that this little company that started from nothing 6 years ago is sitting on a gold mine from that perspective. Of course, the big bet longer term is not just do you think it's going to help your sleep, joint pain, glaucoma, Crohn's, whatever it may be, and that's what research is saying, or that's what your doctor's telling you. What about when your medical plan actually pays for it? And that's obviously what they're playing for there. What I thought I'd do after that kind of brief intro, hopefully that was of some interest. Maybe everybody knows all that kind of stuff, but I thought I'd just kind of give that little preamble. Spend a couple of minutes and tell everybody each of your what your businesses do, so we have that context, and then we can just talk about how technology is shaping the industry and where we think it's going. Joseph, Canideal, is that how we...
Yes, Canideal.
Fantastic. Tell us about...
One digital marketplace for the entire cannabis industry. Or if you're... Excuse me? Oh, is my mic not on?
You have it on?
I think I have. Oh, okay. Thank you. How's that? Does that work? Okay. So the company is called Canideal. One digital marketplace for the entire cannabis industry. Or if we feel like being a bit more joking, we call it Canideal, Yes You Can. The idea is this. We carry both THC and the ancillary products on our Alibaba type website, right? It's an Amazon Alibaba for the cannabis industry. So there's a problem in the marketplace that we've got so much investment coming in on the CBD side, on the cannabis production side. We've got so many brands. The market is highly fragmented. And we have a multi-billion-dollar industry with almost zero digital infrastructure. Right? We have no free market capitalism available. Right? So basically, what we're setting up is a Amazon.com, where people can trade freely. Now, the way we keep it legal is if we're doing an in-state purchase of THC, we geo-ring fence the signal. The banking is done inside the state. The data center is inside the state. The local IP hosting is in the state, and we tie into the state software. So we actually enhance the concept of compliance and are able to assure that the players are not dealing in a gray market or black market, because since we tie into the state software, we can ping their license before they make a purchase. And we give them economies of scale available to digital e-commerce, both on the THC side, where instead of a store having one or two different dispensaries or different grow operations that they could purchase from, or a limited number of CBD oils to choose from, a dispensary can now choose from an unlimited number of CBDs and an unlimited number of producers. Now, on the non-THC side, where we're not facing the same legal restrictions, we can ship soil and lights all across the country without a problem. So what that does is it provides a level of cohesion. Now, and also on the low-level THC CBDs, we can provide those across the country to health food stores, et cetera, et cetera. So we enable the defragmentation of the marketplace, free market capitalism. It's essentially a digital flea market for the entire industry that makes trading smooth, easy, and it solves the problem of scale. Today, if a person wants to buy THC, it's a setup that is ridiculous, and it's not scalable.
Joseph, let me jump in, because that's a good description. Just a couple questions. I want to jump to the other.
Sure.
Are you in business today, and in what states?
We have launched our vendor side, so vendors can start putting in products now. Our software is almost complete. We'll be launching mid-January in 22 states, including Oregon, Nevada, Massachusetts on the THC side, and the entire eastern seaboard for non-THC products. So everything from Michigan and Ohio east, where we have medical, will be operating.
One more question, we're going to jump to Brad. Are you looking for investors at this point?
Yes. Yeah. Our stuff, all of our financials are done by BDS Analytics, which, the premier analytics company in the space, and we've got a very solid game plan in place.
Super. Okay, that's a good intro from your perspective. Brad, please tell us about Sale.
Yeah, sure. So Sale is actually one of the brands that's represented under now the newly formed parent company CB2 Insights. CB2 Insights, which is now on the map for aiming to go public through an RTO in Canada around end of October, early November. Starting our process already now with filing the preliminary prospectus, with the shell, et cetera, already signed. So CB2 Insights is taking the position in the market where we feel, from a global perspective, technology should be able to scale better data to create better insights. And the journey really started out as the founders, myself and my business partner, within the healthcare sector, moving into cannabis and trying to determine how best to educate physicians at the point of care when prescribing medical cannabis, or qualifying patients or creating contraindications, which we all know is pretty vast and unknown. And so in order to fill the gaps within better data, trusted data, better quality data, we went on the road of trying to create a house of brands which would eventually play from seed all the way through to consumer and be able to track information that we would control and that we could use to then create better predictive analytical tools with that could then be licensed to the industry at a global space. So CB2 controls today 3 brands. Canideal Docs, which operates at the boots on the ground level. It's a cannabis evaluation center in the US, 9 states, 26 locations, and generates, this year we'll track about $11 million in revenue. with positive cash flow. Operates Sale, which is a cannabis EMR system, which operates with clinicians at the point of care, interacting with patients all the way through from qualification through to prescription and follow-up. Is within Canada, US, Australia, and Colombia. And our third brand, which we just acquired, is Token, which is a customer loyalty and retention program for dispensaries that works at the point of sale through more of an app-based feature that now allows us to track patients all the way through from prescription through to retail to point of sale and down to the efficacy level, and is live currently within 2 states in the US.
No, that's great. And what dealer is helping you with your RTO?
So it's co-led by Canaccord and Gravitas.
And how much do you plan on raising?
We're going for 5 to 10 million will be the size of the deal. Marketing starts, I think September 24th is when we'll begin.
And the pre-money value?
Pre-money valuation will be 50 million Canadian, so 60 cents a share. It's a unit deal with a half warrant, 80 cents a share.
Okay, great. And just apologies, what's your pre-money value for your investment opportunity?
According to BDS Analytics, we're 187.
187 million?
Yes.
Okay. Great. We'll come back to each of you guys. Thank you very much. A little bit of disclosure here. Michael Klein, who's coming up next. I am chairman of the company that he is CEO. We just announced yesterday technology-based digital platform that he's going to tell you about in 1 second, but I wanted to disclose that conflict of interest. So Michael, and Michael's background, why we loved him so much, is that he built for Condé Nast all of their digital channels, Vogue.com, GQ.com, and has a very strong history with MTV and a number of other fantastic brands. He's played a big role. Tell everybody about Cannabis MD.
Thank you. So Cannabis MD is a digital platform that owns the largest collection of cannabis-related domains in the world. We have 12,000 exact keyword domains related to cannabis ailments and interests in the cannabis category. CBDepilepsy.com, chronic pain THC.com, cancercannabis.com, asthmacbd.com, whatiscbd.com. With this, we are building the authority for unbiased information related to potential benefits around medical cannabis and CBD. It's a really interesting venture, and we identified a need in the marketplace to have an authority of premium, authentic content in a world where there is so much interest that is brewing and growing, and you know, everything from the passing of legislature for medical cannabis around the United States to, of course, legalization happening in Canada and consumer behavior that's shifted in America. With the site, it's a combination of original video, research reports, original content, articles, etc. Really delivering to that consumer need for that premium content. And Cannabis MD represents one vertical inside of our company, Miraculo, which we launching several verticals in the cannabis space, identifying market needs in a variety of different areas.
That's great. And the company's also doing its last round for individuals before it completes an RTO. Let me ask each of you, and probably everybody knows this term, in Canada, business is either white or not white. It's black and white. And
Just finish your sentence, that sentence, like pre-money valuation and all that sort of stuff.
Thank you. Good point. This is going to be a very tiny deal, a couple $1 million. Pre-money is about 13 million Canadian. This notion, and again, apologize if everybody knows this, but it is a very bright line test. In Canada, the first question, if you went to see an investment banker or investor like myself with your business, you want to know whether it's white or not. And white means you do not contradict any law in any jurisdiction of any kind, nothing gray. And so anything that touches the plant, anything, you can't say, oh, I have a digital property, and if you click through and buy a bong or buy some CBD oil from somebody, that's great because you are facilitating that exercise. And so my question, I mean, Michael, we know, I apologize, I'm answering it for you, but we know we set out day one to have Cannabis MD be a completely white business of all kinds. Proud as you're, and there's nothing wrong with this, but I just think everybody should understand that distinction and curious about your business. Is Sale a white business today?
Sale is yes. Some of the brands under CB2, I guess, by virtue of sitting here in the US, you're never really white. I mean, so while the business itself is white in terms of what it does, by virtue of simply being in this jurisdiction, you're not, which is, you know, the unfortunate part of it. But that answers your question.
Yeah, well, in my circle, that would be a non-white business. It's a bright line test, it's black and white. It's not bad, it does impact valuation, but it also is an opportunity in the sense that you can often buy these at much lower valuations than you would if they were completely white. The best example being what I described earlier, the Canadian licensed LPs against the Canadian listed U.S. State licensed producers. I forgot to mention in my background, I was the chairman of the Canadian Venture Exchange for a number of years and vice chairman of the Toronto Stock Exchange. It was very interesting to see when the Toronto Stock Exchange, about a year and change ago, decided not to list any Canadian companies that had any U.S. operations, or in other words, were not white. I'm told there was, frankly, fear amongst the very senior executives. The CEO of the Toronto Stock Exchange is an American. The chairman spends most of his life in Florida. And they had no interest in that earlier discussion about possibly changing their lifestyles. What they did, ironically, was create the Canadian Stock Exchange and the NEO. There are two other stock exchanges in Canada. The Canadian Stock Exchanges where all the Canadian listed U.S. operators or non-white businesses are, plus there's a new exchange called the NEO, which is evolving and starting to add listings as well. But it's been very interesting because having been the chairman of the Venture Exchange, if you would have said to me 5 years ago that the Canadian Stock Exchange would someday eclipse the Venture Exchange in volume, I probably would have bet my beloved cottage. And in November and December of last year, there was more volume on the Canadian Stock Exchange than there was on the Toronto Venture Exchange, which has really turned a lot of heads and gives you a sense of how much interest there is in the sector. Joseph, is your business a completely white business or is it gray?
We consider it to be completely white. First of all, on the non-THC side, we are completely white. We facilitate, we consider it to be white. First of all, on the non-THC side, our engine does two things simultaneously. We can separate out the non-THC products from the THC products. So all of that is completely white. We facilitate the sale of non-THC products, right? We don't touch the product, and we just facilitate the trade. Now,
Let me jump in here, though, just because we want to have some fun with this panel. If, in our view, and this is pretty much black and white in Canada, if you link through to somebody that sells one of these products in the United States of America, even if it's in a state where it's fully licensed recreational, you are not a white business. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's...
So if I sell dirt?
Dirt's fine. That's why
lamps
is the number one stock.
So lamps are okay too?
Lamps are okay.
Okay, right. So if I sell pre-roll cartridges out of China, just plastic tubes from China, is that okay?
The cartridges are fine.
Okay. So if I get an opinion from an attorney that says I can sell these things inside the state and then it's pure white, then I'd be operating on a white basis, wouldn't I? On a non-THC basis.
And I can assure you...
To Scott's point, we've been down this road and we've had conversations with the TSX group companies, and the truth is if you operate in any capacity with the word cannabis industry in the U.S., to Scott's point, even if it's... I would even think dirt now, they would think the same way, but really...
The best example...
Well, then I'm a little gray.
Yeah, no, which is fine.
I mean, yeah.
I'm not in any way trying to...
Welcome to the dark side.
Yeah, fine by me.
The way Joseph described his business of a big marketplace sounds like a great opportunity. So in no way am I suggesting it's not. I just thought it would be interesting for everybody to know how black and white this is. The example in Canada was Namaste, some people may know the name, was sitting as a 30-cent stock, big marketplace to buy and sell bongs and do a whole bunch of stuff, and they operate in the U.S. Look at the chart, it happened last December. The stock went from 40 cents to $4 in 10 days. The other big example is Afria, one of the big players in Canada. They had an interest in Liberty, which was their subsidiary to go after U.S. activities. Liberty listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange. The Toronto Stock Exchange said to them, you have to divest it or you're going to go off the exchange. They decided to divest it. It was kind of a wonky trade. Their stock took off as well. Again, the big opportunity, I would argue, is in the non-white businesses because their valuations tend to be depressed to reflect that reality. And if you believe that day by day that won't become an issue, That's the big opportunity. The opportunity with the big guys are, what I was saying earlier, in my view, they've already got a head start. Nobody's going to catch them. The only way you can catch them is to be like Constellation did, and you'll probably see that with Diageo and a number of the others big players. Let me ask all three of you a quick provocative question that's not related to your own business. What aspect of technology do you think, if you weren't doing your individual businesses here, what part of technology would you recommend investors look at in the cannabis space?
Other than our own?
Yeah, other than your own.
I don't really think about anything other than my own.
That's a true entrepreneur. I love it. Fair enough. And maybe I just wanted to spice it up and see. And it's a fair point. An entrepreneur is living and breathing his own thing. But any thoughts on other areas in technology that?
I mean, I have thoughts, but I'm probably
Smart. That's a smart answer.
reserve my answer.
Let me
Well, actually, I do have a thought on that. What we do is we're a front-end sort of business. So in order to effect a sale, we tie into the state API and check the licenses of the businesses that are going to be trading cannabis on our platform. So the people that make that software, that provide it directly to the state, that all the states need, that's a good play.
I think
We like to be in the front end
interesting.
of
In
that.
fact, the one thing I would kind of throw out there is, in my involvement with Halo, the company I mentioned earlier, which is Nevada, Oregon, and California, it's so ridiculous from a conventional business perspective that you can't move the flower or concentrate across state lines. Now, the black market, it looks like it is happening, particularly in Nevada, but you can grow flower as low as 20 cents a gram in Nevada today. The lowest producers in Canada, Afria would argue they're probably the lowest producer, around 80 cents a gram. Nevada, you're going to double that to be 40, 50 cents as an example. That feels like an area where some type of fulfillment, logistics, which might be like your marketplace or it might be other technologies, back to the point made by David and his colleagues, you need to think about what exists today. And in Halo, you've got three separate businesses, a whole regulatory regime in Oregon, same thing in Nevada, same thing in California. That feels like a real technology opportunity. Why don't we open up to questions? Sir.
There was supposed to be a tracking of dollars from seed to sale. That does not seem to have ever been implemented at all. What happened there, at least in the U.S., I thought that was the case.
Well, it is. In Canada, there was a company called Ample that Canopy bought. And there was a scare, some people might remember, about 18 months ago where Organogram, they did some testing of the licensed producers and they had some pesticides above the limit. There was a brief lawsuit, stock went down, a little bit different than your point, seed to sale, but some of the concern was black market product making its way into that flow. So there is technology. I think Ample's kind of 80% of all the licensed producers in Canada, so Canopy's selling that solution, that technology tracking, literally an RFID tag on that plant all the way through to that being sold. Today, it's only online, obviously, through medical providers.
Monies were supposed to be tracked too, until we talk about that.
Yeah, well, in Canada, no Canadian bank until about 6 months ago would bank a cannabis company. Bank of Montreal decided to be the pioneer. Not only did they accept opening up bank accounts, but they co-led a Canopy financing. That was the big catalyst was Constellation buying 10% of Canopy, then Bank of Montreal agreeing to do the banking was also huge. So today, and I think the Royal's now in the business, Royal Bank of Canada, and it's still a huge issue. I know the other day with Halo, they could not wire money to Canada from Oregon. Because of the concern of the community bank in connection with their rules.
You mentioned this whole kind of black, white, gray issue, and so obviously, all the gray listing companies are listing in the CSE, U.S. listed, so obviously not an issue of getting listed in Canada. Cronus and Tilray and the NASDAQ, and so does that make the TSX less relevant longer term in this industry, or do they have to adapt to this gray area?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was, does the fact that many of the U.S. producers getting listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange, and now NEO. You're going to start to see some being listed on NEO, and a couple of the big guys. Kronos was listed in Canada and then got a NASDAQ listing. Tilray did a NASDAQ IPO. Does that make the venture exchange less relevant? I think absolutely. I think they've got their hands full. It's not only this issue, but the venture exchange is known for being a quasi-regulator, and there's a real wave of movement towards these other exchanges because a critic would say they're less focused on regulation. They would say they're more pro-business and they're more focused on disclosures. CSC's answer to this issue about U.S. Cannabis was disclose it. Put your 8 pages in about all the problems as opposed to just preventing the players from doing it. I do think, but I think it's great for competition, certainly in the Canadian capital markets. And, it's a bit back. I think somebody, our panelists earlier said, some industries don't want this to become U.S. legalized. I can assure you the Canadian Stock Exchange doesn't want it to, because if this becomes the home for U.S. companies to be listed here, obviously Americans, generally have more stroke and power and can beat Canadians. That's what I meant by this regulatory arbitrage. This is a fantastic piece of news for the head offices of these companies being built in Canada longer term. So I've been proud to be. I love the U.S. I'm here all the time as well, but it's a very unique thing that's taking place. Any more questions for our panelists about technology or their own businesses? We've got 5 more minutes. Yes, sir.
Maybe just on the technology front, your earlier question about an area that people should maybe spend a bit more time on. Are there any purpose-built sort of financial technology solutions in this that play to this market?
Do you mean like banking type solutions?
Just repeat the question.
So the question was, are there any purpose-built fintech solutions for the industry? And you mean specifically like working your way around the banking system?
Exactly.
Well, and I'll you guys jump in here, but there's a huge, completely black business of going online. You can go online in New York right now and order some, Blue Angel to your hotel room. And that app is acting completely illegal, and most of them are cash only though. So the guy shows up and you give the guy cash. I'm trying to think if I'm familiar with any that use credit cards.
I can answer.
I am.
Oh, it's
Okay.
fine. No.
Oh, no, they're
Use your mic, please, Joseph.
okay. They're delivery services in Southern California that accept credit cards.
Well, just to answer that question as well, I think part of where I would hope that investment opportunities would go when you talk technology is right now, obviously, is a huge focus. We're looking at the U.S. as a market, but let's not forget it is an international marketplace. There's no challenges with doing this in Canada. In fact, there are companies in Canada that have developed e-commerce platforms that allow for the transaction of currency digitally, and it's fully legal and it's allowed. And they can process it in the U.S. provided that such U.S. company have a Canadian listed account. So when you look outside of the U.S., I think you'll start to find that, I think this black and white line only exists because we talk the U.S. is our biggest market, but, let's not forget, UK is going to be coming online soon. Europe is there, EMEA, South America, and these are, by virtue, true medical markets where products have to go to a patient, patient has to take that to a pharmacy has to get that dispensed from a manufacturer. It is a very much, proper methodology of treatment. And I think when you look at those markets internationally, you see the scope and size of those markets outside of the U.S. I think, yes, U.S. represents a very large market. It'll be a very big market in the recreational space, but I think we're missing the opportunity if we don't look outside of North America and see that there's a tremendous opportunity in these other countries and where there is technology existing for processing the credit cards.
So can I ask a follow-up question? Of course. It's mostly for Joseph and Brad. I'm not sure about Michael. You haven't touched the blockchain technology. We're speaking about the payments, global. Is this in the mix, in the process?
Questions about whether blockchain is playing a role in their businesses.
I think in our perspective, blockchain can play different roles for different technology companies. I think we've assessed the use of blockchain because we deal with a lot of healthcare data along the way. There are other mechanisms for protecting your system for the transmission of healthcare information, and that's existed without blockchain, so we haven't found a need to have to implement it. I think properly used, it has a lot of effect. I could see it being very useful for the seed to sale, the tracking of information along that perspective. And we see a lot of technology companies in the ancillary space in the seed to sale industry starting to implement blockchain. E-commerce is another space where we're seeing blockchain come in. But I'm sure there is definitely validity in utilizing blockchain. It's just a question of seeing who's going to be doing it, actually running with blockchain technologies built behind them.
Any comments on that one, Joseph?
Just from personal experience, I'm wary of taking blockchain payments because we want to ensure that the money is all white market. Right? We want to stay away from any black market money. And so taking that as a form of payment is kind of suspect as far as I'm concerned because of the lack of tracking. But as a solution for us, we can take dollars, and as we hold the money for the transaction, we wait for that transaction to clear, right? We can put it into a blockchain, right, a Litecoin, hold it there, and then turn it into cash on the other end when it's time to release the funds. And that helps us on a banking level.
I think we have time for one more question. Any great illuminating question, illustrious panel? Somebody's got to have one. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. All three companies sound like they are in the throes of raising money, so if you're interested in exploring it, please talk to our panelists. Thank you very much.